but airways not denuded nearly.
Some things you can't unsee.
A chilling discovery unfolded at a gruesome crime scene when a middle-aged couple was found dead in their home, their bodies marked by mysterious circumstances. But the shocking part came when police ventured into the basement. There, hidden in a shallow grave, was the body of a young woman. Without any identification, the authorities temporarily named her Jane Doe. Lieutenant Wade and Sheriff Sheldon, the investigators, were left puzzled. There were no signs of forced entry in the house, yet something about the scene felt wrong. Wade remarked that while there was no break-in, the couple seemed to have been desperately trying to escape. As the investigation continued, the story took another bizarre twist. The focus shifted to Tilden Morgue and Crematorium, a small business run by Tommy and his son Austin. The morgue was situated directly beneath their home, hidden in the basement, and the family also had a pet cat named Stanley. Tommy and Austin were busy conducting an autopsy on a burn victim named Otis. With loud rock music blasting from the radio, they went about their work. After finishing the autopsy, Austin suspected that Otis had died from smoke inhalation, but Tommy corrected him. He explained that Otis had suffered a severe head injury and was already dead before being burned. Stepping out for a smoke, Tommy left Austin alone in the morgue. It was then that Austin heard a strange noise from outside, but it turned out to be his girlfriend, Emma, who had grown tired of waiting and decided to come inside. Austin, eager to leave with her, hesitated when she showed interest in the corpses. Though initially reluctant, Austin allowed her to see them. They only had 3 bodies in the morgue at that moment. The first was Irene, whose eyes and mouth had been sewn shut. The second was Lewis, a man whose face had been disfigured by a gunshot and was covered by a white sheet. Austin pointed out that Lewis had a bell tied to his ankle, a method the morgue once used to avoid burying people alive by mistake. After showing Emma the bodies, Austin and she decided to leave. But as they reached the elevator, Sheriff Sheldon arrived with Jane Doe's body. Seeing the distress on Sheldon's face, Austin couldn't ignore his growing suspicion. He knew his father would want to help with the investigation, so he agreed to meet Emma later. As Austin returned to the morgue, Sheldon explained that Jane Doe had no fingerprints and needed her cause of death determined by the morning. With the radio still blasting, they began the first phase of the autopsy, an external examination. There were no visible cuts or bruises on Jane Doe's body, but Austin noticed her cloudy eyes. Tommy observed that although there were no obvious injuries, her wrists and ankles were fractured. To their surprise, they found peat under her fingernails, an unusual material from northern regions, which seemed out of place since Jane Doe had been discovered far from there. They also discovered that her tongue had been cut out and she was missing a molar. A strange piece of thread was lodged inside her mouth. Next came the internal examination. Just as Tommy was about to make an incision, the radio suddenly shifted to static, followed by a creepy children's rhyme. Austin quickly changed the station and Tommy continued with the incision. However, to their shock, Jane Doe bled profusely, as if she had just recently died. Austin, while preparing to place the skin samples in the freezer, noticed that blood had leaked from the specimen bags. As he cleaned up the mess, Tommy discovered that Jane Doe's lungs were completely blackened, not from smoking but from fire damage. Her heart was also badly scarred, as if it had been repeatedly cut. Suddenly, the storm outside worsened, and strange noises echoed through the building. Austin, feeling increasingly uneasy, decided to investigate. While he was away, Tommy accidentally cut himself during the autopsy. Austin ventured into the corridor, where he glimpsed a figure standing in the shadows. But when he looked again, the figure was gone. He traced the strange noise to a nearby vent and discovered Stanley, the cat covered in blood. Panicked, he rushed the cat to Tommy, who was visibly shaken by the sight of his beloved pet in such a condition. They placed Stanley in the crematorium and Tommy sadly turned on the burner. Back in the lab, Tommy explained to Austin that Stanley was the only reminder he had left of his late wife. Despite the eerie events unfolding, they resumed the autopsy. As Tommy opened Jane Doe's stomach and intestines, he pulled out a rare poisonous flower, a plant that only grew in the northern regions. This confirmed their suspicion that Jane Doe had come from the north. As the storm outside intensified, a radio announcer warned of severe rain, adding to the growing tension. Despite the fear creeping into both men, Tommy insisted on continuing the autopsy. He pulled out a piece of cloth wrapped inside Jane's stomach. When they unwrapped it, they found her missing molar tucked inside, along with strange drawings and Roman numerals. The thread found in her mouth was the same as the one on the cloth, suggesting she had swallowed it as part of some disturbing and ancient ritual. Austin speculated that Jane had been sacrificed, but Tommy dismissed the idea, pointing out that there were no external signs of such a ritual, which would typically involve visible injuries. As the tension in the room mounted, the radio suddenly fell silent. Then, the eerie nursery rhyme began playing again, sending a chill down their spines. Austin, growing more disturbed by the minute, suggested they stop and resume in the morning, but Tommy refused. They pressed on, despite the fear and unease that were starting to overtake them. Tommy peeled back Jane Doe's skin, and to their horror, they discovered ritualistic drawings on the inside of her skin. Just as they made this gruesome discovery, the corpse drawer in the lab began to creak open on its own. The overhead light flickered and shattered, plunging the room into darkness. Austin quickly grabbed a flashlight, and the two of them carefully ventured out of the lab into the corridor. The power went out, and the elevator stopped working, leaving them stuck. They tried opening the main door, but it was jammed tight. As the silence grew tense, a footstep echoed from the hallway. Filled with fear, they rushed into Tommy's office and locked the door behind them. They tried to call for help, but the phone line was faint and barely functional. That's when they heard a sound coming closer. Lewis, a strange figure with ankle bells that jingled as he moved. Austin peeked under the door and saw Lewis trying to break in. Panic set in as they quickly shoved a drawer against the door to keep him out. Austin, feeling the growing danger, told Tommy that it had to be Jane Doe's doing. But Tommy disagreed, stating that Jane was just a corpse. But as they talked, Tommy noticed his old injury had reopened, and he went to the bathroom to clean the wound. Suddenly, something unseen attacked him, throwing him to the ground and slamming the bathroom door shut. Austin rushed to help, but all he could hear were his father's painful screams from inside. When the door finally creaked open, Austin found Tommy lying on the floor, barely conscious. He explained that whatever attacked him had the same cloudy eyes as Jane Doe. Shaken by what had just happened, they made their way back to the lab, hoping to find answers. But when they reached it, they were greeted by an unsettling sight. All the drawers containing bodies were wide open. The realization hit them. They needed to burn Jane Doe's body to stop the evil. They prepared her for cremation, but as they did, the lab doors slammed shut by themselves. Austin tried desperately to keep them open, but failed. In his panic, he grabbed an axe and tried to break through the door, only to see an eerie figure standing on the other side. Irene, a woman with her mouth and eyes sewn shut. Austin's heart raced as he noticed a can of gasoline on the floor. Thinking quickly, he poured it over Jane Doe's body and set it on fire. But instead of burning, the fire spread to the walls and ceiling. They scrambled to put it out, and when they turned back to Jane's body, it remained unscathed. The room grew tense, and then the sound of the elevator echoed down the hallway. They ran toward it, hoping to escape, but the elevator door got stuck. As they waited, the sound of Lewis's ankle bells grew louder, signaling that he was getting closer. When the door finally opened, Tommy, in a desperate act of defense, swung his axe, believing it was Lewis. But to their horror, Tommy had accidentally killed Emma, one of their colleagues. Austin was heartbroken, crying over her body. But Tommy dragged him back into the elevator, trying to shield him from the emotional toll. The elevator wouldn't budge, and they were trapped. Tommy, injured and in pain, started talking about Austin's mother, telling him that he would always be there for him better than he was for her. Austin, overcome with guilt over Emma's death, wanted to find a way to stop Jane Doe once and for all. They decided to go back to the lab, but the air began to thicken with smoke and something struck Tommy. He collapsed, leaving Austin to support him. They finally reached the lab and sealed the door. Austin knew that they needed to complete the autopsy and examine Jane Doe's brain. As they removed her brain, they discovered it was fully intact. Austin examined the tissue samples under the microscope and was shocked to see that the cells were moving as if she were still alive. Despite having removed all her vital organs, something was keeping her alive. Then Austin made a chilling discovery. He found a cloth in her stomach with Roman numerals on it. The numbers led to a passage in the Bible about killing witches. The cloth also had the number 1693 written on it. This discovery revealed that Jane Doe was likely an Englishwoman accused of witchcraft in the 17th century. Tommy explained that these women, including Jane Doe, were not witches but victims of superstition and hysteria. He believed that the rituals done to Jane had transformed her into something evil, seeking revenge. Tommy then noticed strange markings appearing on his own body, identical to those found on Jane's skin. He realized that Jane was somehow connected to these markings. Tommy, desperate to stop the evil, got close to Jane's ears and pleaded for her to take him instead of Austin. But then something horrifying happened. Tommy collapsed, screaming in agony. Jane's body began to heal, the wounds closing up as if she had never been hurt. With Tommy writhing in pain, Austin saw a knife lying on the floor. In a moment of heartbreak, he knew what had to be done. Austin grabbed the knife and, with a tearful heart, ended his father's suffering. Just after the power returned, Austin heard the sound of sirens in the distance. He rushed to open the door but found it still stuck. The voice of Sheriff Sheldon crackled through the intercom, asking him to open the door, but the voice soon morphed into a haunting nursery rhyme. Austin turned around, terrified to find his father standing before him, his eyes now as cloudy as Jane Doe's. In a panic, Austin stumbled backward, falling down the stairs, and, tragically, meeting his end. The following day, Sheriff Sheldon and Officer Wade arrived at the Tilden house, finding it eerily calm, with no signs of the chaos that had unfolded. Sheldon instructed Wade to take Jane Doe's body out of the county and hide it away. The movie closed with Jane's lifeless body resting in a police car, the same nursery rhyme playing eerily on the radio as the screen faded to black. In the end, it was clear that Jane Doe's revenge was not over, and that the Tilden morgue was now a place cursed by the dark forces she had unleashed. And to unleash a new and great movie recap, just click on my recommendations on the right. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button to never miss a new upload. As always, grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.